we picked Dr. Elizabeth Ann Zinsser as the 7th president of Gallaudet was because she is a very talented educator who
Deaf President Now, a presentation by Brooke Badgett, Dawson Lotz, and Ashley Parrott. The who, what, when, where, and why of the 1988 movement. The who. The students, alumni, staff, and faculty of Gallaudet University teamed up in support of Irving King Jordan and Harvey Korson and to protest the chair of the Board of Trustees in their hearing presidential candidate Elizabeth Zinsser. When? Protests had lasted a week. That week began March 6, 1988, and ended on March 13th of 1988, where this week-long protest took place at a college of deaf and hard of hearing, Gallaudet University. This school is located in Washington, D.C. Who, what, when, where, why continued. The what and the why. The people of Gallaudet University were upset about being represented by its 7th hearing president and wanted a deaf candidate to fulfill that role. Students, staff, faculty, and alumni came up with a list of 4 demands to be met by the college in order for the protests to stop. Number 1, Zinsser resign and be replaced with a deaf candidate. Number 2, the chair of the Board of Trustees resign. Number 3, over half, 51% of the Board of Trustees be replaced with deaf members. And number 4, no harm or punishment will come to any of those that are involved in the protests. Lasting effects on the deaf community. The Telecommunications Accessibility Enhancement Act was passed in 1990 after the movement in 1988. The Telecommunications Accessibility Enhancement Act was an act that assures access to federal departments and agencies for the hearing impaired as well as the speech impaired individuals. Another effect is that people in the deaf community now were empowered to achieve things that they knew they could but were discouraged before. Deaf characters were now starting to be played by deaf people in the media, and the deaf community was able to be proud of accomplishments that they had made. Lasting effects on the hearing community. Deaf President Now had showed hearing people a few things. Deaf people could achieve the same things that hearing people could. Deaf people could self-govern in schools. Deaf people were able and motivated to achieve anything. Deaf people were able to communicate strongly with one another, and more importantly, with the hearing community. The hearing community was, in a sense, humbled. The hearing community were finally able to understand that deaf people could have strength, power, and unity when dealing with injustices. Current issues that the deaf community faces. The deaf community faces daily discrimination as well as oppression. There is a continued lack of understanding of the deaf community and the community's values. There is a societal lack of fluency in ASL, which makes it difficult to communicate with people of the deaf community. The deaf community still deals with stereotypes and myths about their community and their values. Current issues continued. Medical studies explain that deaf people suffer from mental health issues twice as much as the general population. There are problems with accessing needed mental health services for the deaf community and a lack of experienced interpreters in the medical field, which leads to problems in translations. There's also a difference in how deaf people and hearing people display feelings and perceive mental health. The recent pandemic also caused a lot of problems in the deaf community, including not being able to see people's faces clearly because of masks. Facial expressions are very important to the dialogue in ASL. Not being able to see facial expressions can change the meaning of a sign, and further make it difficult to communicate with the deaf community during these times. This is Irving King Jordan. He was named the 8th president of Gallaudet University and the first deaf president of Gallaudet University. He once said, "Deaf people can do anything hearing people can, except hear." Here is an image from the protests, the Deaf President Now movement. It's a group of students, staff, and alumni gathered in front of the university. Here's an older-timey one.
Spillman said today the time hasn't arrived yet for a deaf person
and
to
following
function
this
in the hearing world.
are some clips from the beginning
minute.
and the end of the
Now
protest.
is the time for us to have a deaf president.
Deaf president first. Deaf president now.
And many other things.
A deaf president, King Jordan, had been selected. There was excitement everywhere. Everyone was jumping up and down, shouting. Even the faculty and staff, even older people were jumping and shouting. We were thrilled. We couldn't believe it. Jordan was chosen. All of our demands had been met. There would be no reprisals. But the chairperson, who would the chairperson be? Phil Braven answered that he had been chosen. What a blessing. After that whole week of hard work, many students didn't know what to do. There was so much excitement. Everyone was running around. They were supposed to go to the field house. We all ran over there and people were drinking. That wasn't legal, but it was the law of the land for that week, so we didn't care. It was what we wanted.